working as a data analyst for the Ecological Footprint Initiative for your university. I'm currently working from Costa Rica, which kind of explains my interest in the topic. So yeah, just jumping straight into it. Just for reference, Costa Rica is this tiny country in Central America, and the size of it becomes relevant later on when we talk about the spatial implications of the footprint, especially in a very small country. But yeah, I will try to give you a summarized version of how I use the national footprint accounts and the ecological footprint to look at the dynamics of monocropping in Costa Rica, and particularly the ecological footprint of the pineapple industry. So really, I started with two main questions. One is slightly more important than the other one, but I wanted to understand how bad pineapple monocropping really is in Costa Rica. There's a lot of talk about its sustainability or its unsustainability, a lot of very complex topics about the dilemma between creating jobs versus ecological harms. And slightly less important, I wanted to know why Hawaiian pizza is called Hawaiian pizza, but that one was very quick to figure out. I'll leave it there anyway. But to solve the first question, first I think it's important to have some background on the history and culture and economy of Costa Rica and how it's been always tied to cash crops, even since the birth of the country as a republic. Coffee was a very important crop. A lot of the economy in Costa Rica was tied to coffee. Then came banana plantations and the banana industry and the pineapple industry with very different dynamics. But yeah, the pineapple industry got established around the 1980s, and since then it's had a massive impact on the country's economy and even the country's ecosystems. So yeah, it's a very relevant topic right now because there's a lot of discussions around its unsustainability, and those have to do with several fronts. One of them is that Costa Rica is a tropical country. That means that we don't have the most fertile soils, and pineapples have a very small root system that's very superficial, meaning that they deplete the nutrients of the topsoil very quickly. This means that they're a very agrochemical intensive crop, and that leads to very quick soil erosion and degradation, as you can see in the picture here in the background. It's a fairly large pineapple plantation, and that's not the normal color of soil. Those are very depleted soils that they have to rotate constantly. But even in a tropical country, it would be very complicated to regenerate an area of that size after a plantation of that magnitude using so many agrochemicals. There's also been a lot of allegations of human rights abuse linked to pineapple plantations, but they are always contrasted against the capacity of the pineapple industry to provide jobs. So around 150,000 jobs in a country where we only have 6 million people is very significant, and it poses a very big dilemma. Despite all of that, Costa Rica became the top exporter of pineapples in the world around 2007, benching Hawaii and benching everyone else, which is fairly impressive for such a small country, and there are very complex reasons for why that has happened. But it is the case now, and it's important also to notice that most of the pineapple produced in Costa Rica is exported to the USA, to Canada, and to Europe. So going into what the national footprint accounts and the ecological footprint as an indicator can provide for us is an important part of it is the spatial representation of the links between ecological and economic data. So on the right, we have a map of Costa Rica showing the real extent of pineapple plantations in Costa Rica, taken from satellite imagery. And on the left, on the larger red square, we have a representation of that if we included all the other inputs that go into producing one pineapple. growing one pineapple doesn't only require the space of growing one pineapple, that applies for any crop. It also requires a space for um, all other flows and all other agrochemicals that go into it, and that makes the real area that we need to grow a crop much larger than we can actually see. And this is the type of information that we can take from national footprint accounts when we look at specific commodities. So we use this data to quantify the spatially explicit impact of pineapple plantations in our ecosystems on 3 different levels: for production, consumption, and exports. So very quickly, we can see that pineapple and the green lines are all pineapple, despite being the younger sister of the 3 iconic crops in the country. It's had a very quick growth and a similar ecological footprint, both in consumption and production, next to banana and coffee. But when we look at exports, it's very obvious that it has a much larger ecological footprint. And that's maybe by itself is not particularly significant, but here when we look at the blue line on the bottom, we can see that the area used to grow pineapple is much smaller than the area to grow coffee, for example. That means that it's not a particularly efficient crop. That pineapple somehow has the pineapple industry somehow has a smaller shoe, but leaves behind a larger footprint. And I think that's the key finding that we can get from this set of data, that the pineapple industry is not particularly efficient in the way it uses land, and that this can be evidence to argue that the reasons for its popularity as a crop in Costa Rica, as a main industry in Costa Rica, don't necessarily have to do with the long-term economic sustainability, but they probably have more to do with short-term growth linked to all the jobs that they can provide in the short term. One example of this is a small town in the south of Costa Rica called Buenos Aires, where a lot of the pineapple plantations are concentrated, but it's continuously, year after year, one of the poorest regions of the country, meaning that we can have an indicator that, yes, we have many jobs, sure, but we're still leaving a larger footprint in the long term. And yeah, going back to my much less important question, this is just a reflection on what the pineapple industry is now looks like now in terms of production. So Costa Rica produces around 9.2% of the pineapples in the world. While Hawaii, which used to be the top producer really not that long ago, a couple decades, now only produces about 0.4%, which is quite impressive. Yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.